breath of fresh air, I guess you'd say. Why don't you maybe start off the conversation with something about I think it's probably freshest in your mind, some of your impressions of the essay and the argument that Frank has made in it.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Just what sticks out in your mind.
Well, about the way that having a group of people who were enslaved suppresses wages for working white people. That's kind of the big thing, and the fact that we still have a version of that. In fact, this morning as I was kind of rereading the article, what I was even thinking about is this other area of labor that doesn't get talked about. To me, it seems like, you've kind of got salaried employees and hourly employees, but then there's also a category of people who are working for nonprofits, and I started wondering, well, how does that also kind of fit into this idea about labor? And I don't know if that makes any sense to introduce that at this point or not, but these were some things that I was thinking about this morning. And anyway.
So what people who are tuning in might not realize is that this essay first ran in 2015 as a response to all the controversy about the Confederate flag being flown over state houses in the South and other places. And so I wanted to start off by addressing my feelings about the Confederate flag. But the reason that the three of us are talking today, is that somehow spontaneously my essay has started getting passed around on the internet. I had a friend on Facebook who's up in Manhattan tell me that she read it the first time and loved it, and saw it again recently on a site or some group called Rednecks for Reparations or something like that. So lots of people are running into it and passing it around on Facebook and Twitter and who knows whatever else. And so that's how I guess David and Nina found the essay. It's kind of been revived, and hopefully that'll continue. But what drove me on it was that my sense about how working class whites in the South especially, but nationally as well, should feel about these issues were, to me, seem very simple and obvious, and seem like the kind of things that kids in history class in high school should be hearing this analysis. This is not, what I've described is not a set of opinions. My entire essay is a string of facts. And so to catch people up who may not have read the essay, basically my point is that to want the Confederate flag to come down because of the effect of the Confederacy and racism on black people, that's bad enough. But that's not the only problem. That by the Southern slave owners enslaving people and getting essentially free labor, they drove down the value of labor throughout the South. And Southern working class people suffered economically indirectly because of slavery. And so the Southern slaveholders and the people who had money for newspapers and magazines in the South at the time put out this false story that somehow even the Southern white poor people benefited from slavery. But the only benefit they got was just to feel like they weren't that. I may be bad off, but I'm not as bad off as these black people working on the plantation. That was the only real benefit that they had, such as it, if you could call it. But that the economics of slavery wasn't only bad for black people; it was bad for non-rich white people. And this is important because if we want the white working class or white people generally or Southerners, if we want them to vote in ways that help struggling people, working class of white, black, or people of color of any sort of folks, then what we need to do is we need to be directly addressing their self-interest. Because when the point of politics is to persuade people. And that seems obvious, but I mention it because I've been doing politics since I was 18, started fighting the Dixiecrat Strom Thurmond in South Carolina 42 years ago. And what was obvious to me even then was that a lot of people, in the way that they did politics, they hoped to win, but they were not interested in developing their ability to persuade. A lot of it was that they wanted to make it clear that they were a better person than the people they were campaigning against. And I can understand that sentiment, but in a democratic society, that it just backfires. And so if you want to make conditions better for working people in America, in the flawed democratic society that we have, then the best thing a person can do is to better develop their skill at persuasion and to develop your able to do is find the other, because people will only change their views, only change the way they vote, in response to their own self-interest. It's the rare person that's going to change or do something different because they're concerned about some other people. It's just human nature, and we won't be changing that anytime soon, and especially in a culture like America where, despite it being supposedly a Christian country, as a friend of mine put it when we talked about some right-wing politician who was pro-Christian and all that, my friend says, so is this guy a follower of the kind Jesus or the mean Jesus? We've got a lot of people who are followers of the mean Jesus. And if we want them to vote differently or to see issues differently, we just have to engage their self-interest. And that's what the essay was about. I was aiming at people I grew up with. My childhood started in a trailer park. My mother didn't go to college. My father didn't go to high school. I never made more than minimum wage till I was 32 years old and started my own business. So I was aiming this at the southern white working class people that I grew up with, many of whom still live in trailer parks, many of whom voted for Trump and think he's marvelous and think he's a gift from God. And so the essay wasn't telling the people, yeah, you need to take the flag down, the Confederate flag down, because it hurts the feelings of black people. That is not a persuasive argument with this crowd. Instead, the argument was the Confederacy was this false notion that you benefit from black people being enslaved, which was like, it's just the facts, the numbers do not support that. And all these like sons of the Confederacy who want to say, oh, it wasn't so bad, and it was such a good thing for my ancestors to be in the South, kind of like, dude, the numbers don't support that. It's like your people and my people may not have been enslaved, but we were pretty much shut down financially. The comparison of land ownership and education and wealth between the North and the South, yeah, we were white, working class, working poor. We were impoverished because of the downstream effects of slavery. And so that was the point I wanted to make. I want to engage their self-interest because about how the Confederacy affected their families.
Yeah, and
they're not interested. They really are just. Most of them are not interested in how the Confederacy affected black people then or now. That's like not. You won't get much traction with that argument if you're trying to persuade working class whites. And I'll mention one last thing. So when Obama and Romney ran for president, half the working class whites in the rest of the country went for Obama. So Obama and Romney split the working class white vote in all of the country except the Southeast where like only 1/3 of working class whites voted for Obama, but still 1/3 of working class whites voted for Obama. So there's a huge crowd that I think is susceptible, is open to hearing arguments that address their self-interest and can bring them to voting for better candidates and better policies. So that's what the essay was about.
Yeah, that's and the same argument certainly can be applied and has been for the Jim Crow era as well, and for the present moment. Would you say, Frank? I mean, that's.
I missed part of your question because the screen froze up. Can you say that again?
The same argument applies for the Jim Crow era and right down to the present day. I think we really need to build up a kind of a repertoire of this kind of information that would be a part of the talking points, of any progressive movement in the, that tries to reach out to European American working people in the South. I've quoted this before, but it's not really a quote, but it's sort of paraphrasing Martin Luther King, who in his speech after 1965, after the Selma to Montgomery March, he said that in effect that Jim Crow is a skinny bird on which to feed your family, and I really think that King was really grasping how, more so than almost anybody that I can see, really grasped how to reach out in the same way that you're talking about both appealing to the to look at your interests clearly. That I think is one of the hallmarks of it, not clouded by this fog, of white supremacist illusion and the illusion of superiority. I think that there's an awful lot of that fog that's surrounding the folks who are out there who as you said, think Trump is a gift from God. If there's anything to be learned, it's that the fact that among poor whites who vote, they vote Republican, and African Americans vote Democrat, means that the working class is divided between the two parties, and they can't fight for their own interests. We can't fight for our own interests. So anyway, that's certainly part of the reason why the wages are low, the standard of living is low, the rate of unionization is low in the South. This is pretty much the pattern that exists. I mean, if white supremacy was so good for whites, how come the place where it's most intense is the place where white working people have the worst conditions? And
I'm going to steal that line someday. If I remember, I will give you credit. But I'm 60 years old, so I may not remember that. But that's a good angle. That kind of is in a nutshell kind of sums up my essay. White supremacy was so good for white people, then why does your life suck?
Yeah,
like somebody in New England or the Northwest, or the Midwest. Yeah, but I think that. So let me, if I could broaden the context of my essay a little bit. Like I said, I started doing politics in 1978 and back in a Democrat, trying to beat Strom Thurmond, which you might not be surprised to hear, that didn't work. But in trying to educate myself about politics, and how does this work, and how do we beat the odds, and how do we win victories for working people, and looking at history and reading biographies of leaders like Harvey Milk, Martin Luther King, and other folks, one of the sad conclusions I've had to come to is that the left, however you want to define the left in America, but the left has mostly, not always, but mostly been losing since 1968. And I used to say since 1980, but then I thought about it and read some more, and I was like, no, it's 1968 was kind of the turning point. And part of it is that I think that a lot of people on the left